Well, shalom, shalom. This is Barbara, and I'm serving as your host today, and also Catherine is here as your co-host. Well, our title today is, What is a Translation Day? And are there non-days in a lunar calendar? Good questions. But translation days are not non-days. They have a date, the 30th of every 30-day month. The Creator's calendar bases each month on the movement of the moon. Each month begins with the new moon. The week, being a division of the month, restarts its cycle every new moon. And this is a quote. The Hebrew month is a lunar month, and a quarter of this period, one phase of the moon, appears to have determined the week of 7 days. The Hebrew Sabbaton was celebrated at intervals of 7 days, corresponding with changes in the moon's phases. And that's from the Encyclopedia Biblica. I'll leave all these links below for you to study out. So this is the hardest point to comprehend when first beginning to study the calendar of creation. The modern solar calendar, that's a Gregorian calendar, has a continuous weekly cycle. The calendar of creation does not. The modern calendar we have today has months ranging in length from 28 days to 31 days. The months are not tied to anything in nature. Consequently, the week cycles continuously and without interruption from one month to the next and from one year to the next. Here you go, Catherine will help me with the reading today.
New moons are significant components of the biblical method of timekeeping, since they are the point in time at which the weekly cycle restarts for that month. The phrase new moon in Scripture comes from the Hebrew word Kodesh. The New Strong's Exhaustive Concordance of the Bible defines Kodesh as the new moon, by implication, a month. The New Strong's Expanded Dictionary of Bible Words expounds on this.
Okay, Sister Ann, go right ahead.
Okay, new moons are significant components of the biblical method of timekeeping, since they are the point in time at which the weekly cycle restarts for that month. The phrase new moon in Scripture comes from the Hebrew word Kodesh. The New Strong's Exhaustive Concordance of the Bible defines Kodesh as a new moon, by implication, a month. The New Strong's Expanded Dictionary of the Bible Words expounds on this, explaining Kodesh can refer to a month or the period from one new moon to another. In a related nuance, the word refers not so much to a measure of time as to a period of time or a calendar month.
Okay. So new moons have no corresponding day in the Gregorian calendar, with its months divorced from anything in nature. Thus, many people are confused over what to do on new moon or how to observe it. Scripture reveals several things about the observance. In the time of the earliest prophets, the new moon stood in the same line with another lunar observance, the Sabbath. And that quote is from the Scribner's Dictionary of the Bible. 1, new moons were non-commerce days. 2, new moons were days of worship. And 3, new moons were days of thanksgiving. So now we're going to talk about translation days. Translation days are like new moons, but have no direct correlation in a modern solar calendar. However, it is necessary to understand what they are in order to have a clear comprehension of Yah's calendar. Translation Day is an astronomical term It is not found in Scripture. However, the fact that the biblical months were based on the cycles of the moon is sufficient proof that they exist in the biblical calendar. According to the United States Naval Observatory, a lunation is 29.5 days long. Generally speaking, this equates to every other month having 29 days and off months having 30 days. A lunation never has less than 29 days or more than 30 days, and this is a demonstrable astronomical fact. So astronomers use the term translation day to designate the 30th day of a lunation. It falls at the end of a lunar cycle on the black moon, when the moon cannot be seen. And go ahead, Sister M, and read this page.
Okay. Because time itself is continuous, many have believed that the system by which time is calculated must also, by default, be continuous. This is an error of assumption. Originally, all ancient calendars were luni-solar, with a weekly cycle of varying lengths, restarting every new moon. Chronologists date the first calendar with a continuous weekly cycle to Babylon around 600 BC. Prior to that time, no calendar utilized a weekly cycle that had no interruption. The weekly cycle restarted at the beginning of the month lunation.
And that's another quote from Hexabar Zerubbabel, the 7-day cycle. So confusion over translation days has led some people to reject the biblical lunar solar calendar. The fourth commandment clearly states, 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of Yahweh thy Elohim, Exodus 20:9 through 10. Well, not understanding translation days has led to the false assumption that in a 30-day month, there are a total of 9 days between the 7-day Sabbath on the 29th of one month and the next 7-day Sabbath on the 8th of the new month. This appears to create a problem because that time span is greater than 6 workday interval between Sabbaths prescribed in the fourth commandment. However, because new moons are a type of a holy day, there are never more than 6 work days in between worship days. A lunar month never has more than 30 days and is never shorter than 29 days. Thus, the day following the 30th, which is new moon, always begins the new month. There are occasionally consecutive months having a 29 days or 30 days as regulated by the moon. Here, Sister M, this is part of the old month and part of the new month, day 30. Would you read this?
The assumption that there will be too many work days between Sabbaths comes from not understanding that the new moon itself is a worship day that starts a new cycle of 4 weeks, 6 work days, each followed by a 7th-day Sabbath. As the new moon begins the new weekly cycle for the new month, translation days are not part of that weekly cycle, even though they are a day with a date. Translation days, which are always the 30th on a lunar month, can never be transferred to the next month or counted as a date in the new month because the next month always starts with New Moon Day, which is the day counted as a date in the new month. Which is the day following Translation Day. With the new moon, a new cycle of 4 weeks begins. Interestingly enough, this confusion always arises among those in the West who have only ever known a calendar with a continuous weekly cycle. In countries that use lunar calendation for their religious calendars, it is an easier concept to grasp.
Okay, thank you. So day 30 is part of the old month and part of the new month. So we have to have a new moon day to start on a brand new start, and that's day 1 of the month. So translation days are not non-days. All time must be accounted for. Thus, translation days are not non-days, as some have suggested. They have a date, the 30th of every 30-day month. The 30th of the month, like the first of the month, was not part of the 7-day weekly cycle. However, it was counted, and it did have a date. As the new moon begins the new weekly cycle for the new month, translation days are not part of that weekly cycle, even though they are a day with a date. Translation days, which are always the 30th on a lunar month, can never be transferred to the next month or counted as a date in the new month. Yahweh has always clearly specified by name or date which days are to be kept holy. Thus, all days that are not specifically designated as holy days are work days, and there are never more than 6 work days in between rest. And we know that new moon days are worship days. It says that in Ezekiel 46, 1-3. So Yahweh's holy convocations, including new moons, are a time for renewed commitment to the Creator, a time to slow down, acknowledge the Father's gifts of family, friends, and other blessings. Well, new moons bring a blessing to all who will set aside this time to acknowledge the blessings of Yahweh. They will be kept throughout all eternity as the saved rejoice in the endless blessings of the loving Creator. And we know we will be together in the kingdom. Isaiah 66:23 says, "And it shall come to pass from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, that we will all come and worship before Him," before Yahweh, our King. Psalms 19:1, "The heavens proclaim the glory of Yah, and the skies display His craftsmanship." So I hope that you will go and study more about New Moon Day and about when a month begins and translation days. And to access more information, go to our website, lunarsabbathday.com. You that are here in our fellowship group, I thought this would be a good time to have a discussion about the translation days and that day 30 that is at the end of the month. What do you have to say for newcomers, or do you have a question? Someone here may have an answer for you.
This is Tim Swan.
Oh, hello, Tim.
Hi. So I guess you could categorize this either as a comment or a question, because it kind of contains some information, but it's also kind of me asking what everyone thinks of this. But I kind of have been thinking about these translation days. And I remember, the story of when Saul gets the spirit where he wants to kill David, and they have a new moon feast, and it's like at least a 2-day feast. It makes me wonder if the way they actually treated these translation days, where you would kind of, on the 4th Sabbath, if there was 30 days in that month, if they would actually have a new moon feast up until the end of the first day. So basically, the new moon feast could either be 1 or 2 days. And I just wanted to know if that seems like it's likely to be true.
Well, I agree. I believe it was a 2-day feast with David and King Saul, and the story with David and Jonathan, and 1 Samuel 20. I'll let other people comment. Someone else, what do you have to say to Tim? Is that he says, is it a 2-day new moon feast that they were having?
I would say that it is this 2-day thing, or sometimes rarely it will also even be 3 days because of certain atmospheric conditions that do not allow the crescent to be seen. So these sort of translation days are great days of waiting, and we don't mind waiting actually, because we Chinese we celebrate Chinese New Year for 15 days in a row every year, and
your country has a lot of holidays, so you know, and you've mentioned this before, that this is a 2-day feast with David and Jonathan with King Saul. So, how about anybody else? Do we have anybody else have any comments about a translation day, or what is a translation day? Did this little bit of a study help you understand it better?
Okay, this is Abby, Sister Barb. I just wanted to comment about the word translation versus transition. I'm a little confused, maybe because I am short of my vocabulary, but I only know translation means to translate a word or to be translated from one place to the other. But transition means it denotes time, and transition from one day to the next day, or awaiting time. I don't know if I said that right, but that's my comment. Thank you.
This is
I like the word. I like the transition day too, Abby. Go ahead, Brother Witt. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was responding to the gentleman that was commenting about the 2-day festival or feast. That makes me think that, back in those days, to try to conclude what they were actually doing would be just speculative at best. But one of the things that I heard that kind of surprised me, because I have a copy of this book. One of your readings has referred to Aviator Zerubbabel's book, The Seventh-Day Cycle. And for anyone that's interested in finding out all of the information about translation days, transition days, or all of the different calendar systems that have that are still extant, this gentleman has done an exhaustive study on, and gentlemen that was talking about the Malaysian days. This Zerubbabel's book covers all calendars that have ever been in existence, and I mean it's just an exhaustive study. And he goes into that's the first piece of literature I was guided to find out, about the lunar Sabbath and the validity of the lunar Sabbath, because that 7-day cycle was something that was, a lot of nations never really strayed away from. But when they did stray away from it, I mean, they have run the gamut. They have had, weeks that were 10 days long, and, a month has gone anywhere from, 3 10-day weeks. And this gentleman just covers all of that information. Like I said, if you're really it gets technical because it ties it into the astronomical calendar. So all of this stuff is verifiable. That's why they had said that the data behind the luni-solar calendar system was so precise because it is tied directly to the astronomical calendar, and you can calculate dates back as far as you want because those are things that the movement of the astronomical bodies do not change. And so it's just an excellent source of information if you want to delve more deeply into that. But I was surprised when I heard that name, and my wife is competing with me for access to that book because once we get into it, we don't want to relinquish it. So it's a really good book. But again, it's called The Seventh Day Cycle by Aviator Zerubbabel.
Oh, okay. So I had one of those quotes here.
Yeah, this is Appa. I'd like to speak for a second. That's okay. Hello?
I think she muted. She muted because she was coughing.
Oh, I see.
So go ahead.
Okay, yeah, this is Brother Appa. I just wanted to talk to Tim's comments really quick. If you highlight them, everything on chapter 20 in Samuel, which he was referring to about the new moon, if you highlight all of those, to me it seems pretty clear that the day one is the new moon. And if you look at how time is divided, there is only one day. And what I mean by that is that if you're going by a 12-hour day or you're going by a 24-hour day, at some point that day is over. So the new moon versus the new moon day, we can be defined as a specific moment of time, and that is shown in the Hebrew context, which is to rebuild or renew. And there's only one point in which time it renews itself, and that's during the conjunction, right after the conjunction, the moment that it passes over the middle line of between the sun goes behind the moon, in the essence of when it's passing the moon. So, and that's observable. You can see when you look at a solar eclipse. Watch one online. Go to YouTube and watch a solar eclipse and watch how fast it actually happens. It's actually really fast that it starts to rebuild that light. And so when you hear about two-day new moons, I don't understand it because it doesn't make any sense. How is it going to be a new moon? If it's a new moon day, it's new moon day number 2. It doesn't make any sense. But to me, that's, of course, a lot of people think that there's new moon days, and they get that from Samuel 20 as well. But I don't understand it based on that definition of rebuild, renew, as it pertains to it's pointing to a specific point in time. But that's just my take on it. I know that there's others. Because if you look at it, and if you say there's a 5-day or a 10-day, I mean, that really doesn't, you can actually count any day between the new moon all the way up until the full moon. And guess what? People have actually done that. People actually observe the full moon, as they say it is renewed fully. And so they are following a full moon as they interpret renew or rebuild to the full moon. So I think that's where a lot of confusion is, but I think that it really goes to the stem of it, to the root of it, is when it actually begins to renew. And that is basically almost directly after the conjunction. So that's my take on it.
Thank you, Brother Alpha. Yeah.
This is Brother Whittaker. One of the things that helped me understand that translation day was, if I thought about it, and all my life I have gotten accustomed to, with the Gregorian calendar, the leap year. And that translation day just fell right into that logic that because the days are not exactly 24 hours, that something has to be done to bring it back in alignment every so many days, and that's why, because it alternates between 29 and 30. So that day, it's not that it takes a day for the transition, but the transition doesn't occur until a day after the last day of the month. So you have to have that extra day in order to keep it from drifting continuously out of alignment, like the Muslim calendar does. They just go by the 29 days, and it just cycles continuously through all the seasons. And a luni-solar calendar does not do that because it uses the moon for months and the sun for years. So at some point they have to reconcile. So in the luni-solar calendar, they just reconcile every other month. And so that's my understanding about however many months the cycle is. But that day, it's not the new moon day. It is a day separate and apart from the new moon day. So the new moon, like the gentleman said, that transition doesn't take very long. I mean, you can actually watch it from where you're standing. You can see it. It takes no more than 10, 15 minutes. So anyway, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. The avatars are removable, the 7-day cycle. And I just, Brother Appa, I'm glad you brought that up. And I had several emails today. Whoops, can you hear me okay? I guess. I had several emails today saying that yesterday was the new moon day. So one person said, they thought it was yesterday and they waited to get online. And then another person said it shows on the internet that yesterday was new moon day. So this is the reason we had a 2-day new moon. Conjunction took place, as Brother Appa talked about. It only lasts for a few minutes. And conjunction took place October 25th at 6:49 a.m. And that was yesterday, so it was at 10 minutes to 7 a.m. Eastern Time. And astronomical dawn was before that. It was 6:29. It had already turned to dawn. So astronomical dawn was at 6:29 a.m. and happened just before conjunction took place. So conjunction took place after the day had already started. That means that October 25 is part of the old month and part of the new month. The first new day or new dawn after conjunction is today, October 26th. It is new dawn and a new moon day. So this sets the weekly Sabbath on Wednesday for this month. The moon, this is what Brother Appa was saying. I hope, Brother Appa, you will agree with this. The moon begins to illuminate immediately after conjunction, and we cannot see it, though, until the sun sets, because the moon is obscured by the greater light of the sun. The fact that we cannot see the moon immediately after conjunction, however, does not negate the fact that it has already began a new revolution with new illumination. Often the first visible crescent will be seen on the evening of new moon day, displaying her new light to the viewer. And then we did have a whole video. We did a new moon day dawn after conjunction. So, Brother Appa, do you have any comments or help with this?
Yeah, I do. I have one comment. Everybody's got iPhones, and I suggest that everybody write this down. There's a book called Astrophotography. And in that book, and it's non-biased, it's non-religious, but a man gets very consumed in like photographing the sun and the moon. Not the sun and the moon, sorry, the moon. And he does a picture of the new moon way long before you can ever see the crescent. So if the eclipse, the solar eclipse, is not enough for you, where you see a solar eclipse and you see it rebuild on the other side, like immediately, he actually photographs it. He uses like 7 different layers or something like that with lenses, and he actually photographs it the soonest somebody has ever photographed a new moon after the conjunction. And so it's very fascinating because it just, yes, a lot of things we can build on faith, that it's rebuilding. And we know that the moon builds a certain amount of light in a certain amount of time. I mean, we know that typically, but sometimes it is helpful to, actually see it. And he actually took a picture of it. And you should see how slight that crescent is. You could just barely see it. And I think, that is another important to understand. So you don't feel like you're just taking this based on faith, Like, again, if you watch a new moon, because everybody's got to remember that a solar eclipse is a new moon. It's a conjunction. It's a conjunction, and that the new moon is right after that. That and the astrophotography, and just type in new moons and just read everything he says about new moons in there, and you'll see that picture of that and his non-biased scientific research on how that process works. And, of course, when he has to see it, which is also important because Barb just touched on it. The only time you're really going to see that, because the sun is passing the moon, is that when the sun goes down below the horizon, that moon will be right there above the horizon, barely, because you have to remember that it's only a certain amount of degrees before. So he has to time this photograph at the perfect time in which the new moon will be down by the horizon, right? So it's very fascinating to look into that, the scientific process of that, and of course what people. So it's not just a faith-based thing, right? It's not just our eyesight, but there is some faith there, but there's also been scientific evidence about this process and how it works. So I really suggest looking into those 2 things. Did that help, Barb?
Yes, thank you. And I think I'll close the recording for those that are being quiet because we're still recorded. So just let me close it for now. Thank you